Welcome to the Thornton Business Hour, the Washington Metro Business Resource Program. Stay tuned to hear about business programs, incentives, and much, much more with your host, Pat Thornton.
Well, welcome once again. You know, I always begin our show by thanking you for tuning into the Thornton Business Hour. I know you have many choices, yet you've chosen to be with us, and we certainly thank you for doing so. Well, that construction on 29 half but killed me, but I'm here alive and well and feeling really great on this glorious day. We have a glorious day to behold, and in the studio with us, we have a special guest. Yes, he's a very special guest. Those of you who've heard know that we have Charles McCullough. He's the founder and principal of CoMcCo. Yes. And it's a consulting firm that focuses on organizational management and international strategic planning for nonprofits. Now, we're going to be talking about a little bit something different other than what he does, and we'll get into what he does as well. But certainly, Charles and I are going to have an opportunity to talk about why we need to move away from this two-party voting system, why there's a need, and why being independent matters. And so we're going to have to really focus on that. Charles, welcome to the Thornton Business Hour.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here, Beth. This is great.
It's sure good to have you on and to give you an opportunity to talk about our need to move from a two-party voting system. But, you know, in the first segment, I really like to give people an opportunity to learn about our guests so they can connect to you. People connect to people. They don't connect to information. You know, so tell us a little bit about CoMcCo and how you arrived at the place that you're at right now. You know, tell us a little bit about Charles.
Definitely. You know, actually, that's actually a great way to begin, because a lot of who I am is why I am an independent voter and why I tell other people to be an independent voter, and also part of how CoMcCo started. They're all wound into one. So, see where to begin. I consider myself having almost a lifetime of advocating for community needs, and through that, I realized that sometimes a party structure isn't necessarily the way to go. So, like, the first time I really remember being an advocate is actually, you mentioned Colesville Road, runs through Montgomery County, Maryland, for those who aren't familiar. Well, I was actually on the Board of Education in Montgomery County, Maryland as a high school student.
Really?
Yes, I was. And in that role, this is back in the 90s now, and at that time I was approached by some teachers and other staff, and this is in the 90s, and their concern was that at that point, the school system did not recognize sexual orientation as a protected class. Mm-hmm. And, you know, this is the 90s. This is still very new. And I was like, well, that doesn't make any sense. You know, everyone, the student or faculty, whoever, if you arrive at your place of work, you should feel safe, you know? So even then, I stood up and I said, well, you know, there was no one else standing up. There was no parties there for them. It hadn't reached that tipping point yet. And sometimes, unfortunately, parties wait for a tipping point.
Yes, they wait for a time when there's a tipping point so it can be advantageous to them as opposed to a bold move.
There you go. I was ready for the bold move.
All right.
So I made that proposal, and, you know, this is, again, the 90s, and everyone came out, and if you named the denomination, they told us all that we were going to a very warm place.
Yes. That's a very good way of putting it.
But we persisted, and that passed, you know. Similarly, fast forward to university. When I was in university, I went to Pepperdine University out west. You know, I'm from California, so went back for the sun, you know, a bit. And here we are on campus, and even at that point, the campus did not recognize the Martin Luther King Jr. holiday. If you can believe that.
Yes.
She did not recognize
because
that.
people had, what people don't know is the states had an option of opting out at that time. When Martin Luther King's birthday first became a holiday, there was an option. It was almost like Brown versus the Board of Education, when it was by all deliberate speed, and states had options as to how they would implement.
Right.
Folks had options as to whether or not they would observe or not observe Martin Luther King's birthday.
So at our particular university, we did festivities and all, but we didn't recognize it as a holiday. You know, it wasn't so. You know, the other state schools did, or the state of California did. So again, as student government president there, working with the Black Student Union, it was again speak truth to power. You know, and we were able to get them to recognize the Martin Luther King holiday, and again, just the power of community organizing. You know, and I guess to leap a little bit forward, we see now that when parties move now, when do they move? With community organizing now first. That grassroots is what we call it. So it's building. So you saw high school, you saw college, and then just recently, and then for the past, 8 years now, I was on the United States Postal Service Federal Credit Union. I was on the board of directors there. I got on it in 2008. Because I saw what the economy was doing. And I looked around and I said, well, it doesn't seem like any party's really addressing this the way that, you know, I think they should. And, well, all my money's in a credit union. And credit union's about what? That same grassroots type of stuff. It's people helping people. We
Cooperative.
Exactly. We all put our money in. So I got on the board there, and one thing that I made certain is that we started recognizing more the needs of folks, understanding who our member owners were. So in that role, just made sure that we could, you know, provide better loan programs, not just come down the hammer with people.
You know, we have to talk about that patient lending.
Yeah.
And that cooperative style of lending and the focus of a credit union versus a capitalistic bank system. But, you know, I've already been informed that we have to take a brief pause. So we're going to take a brief pause. We're going to tell you to stay tuned, listen in, and call in at 1-800-450-7876. That's 1-800-450-7876. Don't touch that dial. We will be right back.
Washington, D.C.'s News Talk, 1450 AM WOL and 95.9 FM.
Good morning. This WOL traffic update brought to you by Compassion International. 295 southbound, still pretty slow from Burroughs Avenue to East Capitol Street. On the Beltway right now, still a little heavy on the inner loop as you head toward Connecticut Avenue. Off and on right now. Have been a slow morning on the Beltway and on New York Avenue inbound after South Dakota Avenue toward Bladensburg Road. It's still slow. Becoming a child sponsor with Compassion International will bring hope to a child in poverty. Find out how at compassion.com/radio. Now your WOL weather forecast brought to you by PETA. For today, sunny, high around 70. Tonight, partly cloudy down to 47. Tomorrow, sunny and a high near 72. Our animal companions rely on us, especially during natural disasters. If you're forced to evacuate your home, don't leave your animals behind. Visit helpinganimals.com. Steve Hirschhorn for 1450 AM and 95.9 FM WOL, where information is power.
Oh, and we're back. We're back with Charles McCullough, founder and principal of CoMcCo. In fact, you can call in and speak with Charles at 1-800-450-7876. That's 1-800-450-7876. And we talked a little bit about your background, a little bit of the history. We were at the Federal Credit Union. We did want to give you an opportunity to finish up with that because those of you who tune in regularly know that I also produce a program on Thursdays that's Everything Co-op. And the federal, credit unions are cooperatives. Many of you frown at the thought of a cooperative, but if you're a member of a federal credit union, any credit union, you're a member of a cooperative. And the focus of a cooperative, as Charles so aptly stated, is a drive more toward delivery of services in a way that seeks to not have its main focus be greed and capitalism, but to serve. So let me allow you to finish what you were saying, Charles, so aptly.
That's exactly it. It's all about people helping people. So when I was there, that's what we were doing, making sure that we could provide services that were financial services that were aware of just how people were struggling. So that's examples of some of the volunteer things I did, but even professionally, it just became obvious that the political power, the power for change, is within ourselves. So let's look at that. Let's approach politics with that consciousness. So professionally, like you mentioned, I'm a small business owner. So I took a lot of the understandings of, like most small business owners, took the understandings from what I did for 9 to 5 for other people and said, hey, I can do this. And that's what I did. So I was a school system attorney. And in that role, just became very knowledgeable of the fact that sometimes systems breed, sometimes systems make themselves, put themselves in a situation where they're not able to help. You know, sometimes
you're
they
so caught up in the
perpetuate.
system that you
Right.
don't get to the heart of anything because you're stuck
There you go.
in the system.
Because you're stuck.
Okay.
Because you're stuck in the system. So I served as a school system attorney here locally in the D.C. PS area, working on special education cases. And you know, it was great to sometimes just put down the attorney briefcase, as you were, the metaphor briefcase, and just sit and talk with parents and administrators and really find solutions that way. Again, you're getting past titles, getting past roles, or getting past parties, as we'll come to discuss, and just meet as people to discuss issues. Also, later that led to me working for another organization where I was so privileged to help lead a portion of a Gates-funded initiative, multi-million-dollar Gates Foundation-funded initiative that would help teachers and school leaders grow. And that was an initiative, again, that we found had more power taking it, developing it with teachers, with unions, with parents, with educators from universities, than necessarily relying on government to do it, because unfortunately at that point the party system had already started showing its toxicity. Nothing could be named a federal initiative, or, you know, it was attached to that person. So a lot of people instantly were going to say no, even though it could be really helpful for their states. So it's through these type of professional engagements, and then the stint at an embassy too, looking how these issues are addressed in foreign governments, and seeing how sometimes parties can lead to rapid turnover because of bickering. And that was my experience when I worked at the Australian embassy where I was there, and we had, oh my goodness, I think we had 4 prime ministers in about 4 years because of party infighting.
Yes.
You know, as opposed to just looking at the needs of the folks there in Australia. So an amalgam of all these things really solidified something that had always been someone who was, what I like to say is, I'm an independent voter. You know, someone who just looks at the person, looks at the issues she or he is talking about, and looks at the needs of my community and our community in general, and say, you know, is this the right match? Let's get past instant boxes we put each other in with parties and say, hey, we all want what's best, right? Hopefully we do. And let's work towards that.
Now, you know, when I was younger, I'm still very young, of course, but I've always been very, very active.
School.
Absolutely.
I
You know,
saw you
at
down the
church, I
hallway.
saw you. Absolutely. You know, I've always been youthful in spirit.
There you go.
But, you know, back in the, 70s when I was voting, I would go to different schools. I'm a native New Yorker. I would go to upstate New York. I would be working anywhere. I was in Puerto Rico one time and came home to vote because voting was so important. But all of my years, after I read everything and saw everything, I too was an independent voter. So when you told me that, I immediately had some synergy and connected with what you were saying. I changed my status when I wanted to vote for Jesse Jackson in a primary. That's the only time I changed my status. And I should not have had to change my status and my positioning to be able to vote for someone I thought to be a viable candidate. I should not have to have changed my political affiliation. And so that brings us to the discussion point that we wanted to focus on. I looked at some other options that are there, but why would you say that this two-party system isn't working for us? And, what has you focusing on independence?
I think your example was absolutely perfect about, you wanting to have your voice heard, but not being able to participate under the state framework at the time. Now, thank goodness that's starting to change. The movement's starting to change. We have 23 states right now that now have an open primary system. You know, an open primary system, which is good. So it's becoming less of the case. And a big way shower of that right now is this open primary system. People were very happy when California went, to that system, because as California goes,
is that the
so
ranked
goes the
choice,
nation.
or what is it?
That's an open primary system is an option. So what it is it allows you to participate, to be an independent or to be a Democrat or Republican, and participate in the primary of your choosing.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So that's
Well, that's even better than ranked choice, because
There you
ranked
go.
choice that Howard Dean was talking about was something
Right.
kind of different.
Right.
But the open, I like that.
Mhm. So at least everyone could have a say in the primary. You know what's really funny is that actually, even far beyond you thinking that it just didn't seem right. You know, that parties could say, well, you can't vote in my primary for Jesse unless
Yes.
you're in my party. You know,
Yeah.
as they say down south, something in the milk ain't clean, right?
Exactly.
Something in the milk ain't
Absolutely.
clean about that.
I'm
But
sure you weren't trying to do that ministerial kind of school too. Go ahead with your clean. Go ahead.
well, I am the son of a Baptist minister,
Oh,
so
you
there
see? Okay.
there you go. There you go.
I felt it.
But even back in the beginning of our country, George Washington said the same thing. In fact, he said, as memory serves, he says on about parties that it agitates the community with ill-founded jealousies and false alarms, kindles the animosity of one part against another. So he even saw that if we get too far into parties, it becomes about the parties and not about the people. So you really didn't see parties emerging until the 1790s, and even then a lot of that was just kind of getting the kinks out about how people saw the role of the federal government. Then parties kind of went away again until from 1860s to the 1820s, and then you see them reemerge in the 1830s. And the parties, they've moved, but basically there's only been I'd say about 7 or so major parties, and they've kind of moved with the tenor of the country. So what you see right now, kind of getting to some of the options you've talked at, you see a lot of people noticing, especially with where things are now. A lot of people are trying to say, well, what can we do with our current system to try and at least make the two parties palatable? So we talked about open primaries, other things that folks have talked about. Other things that folks have talked about are, what can we do to have automatic voter registration? Because maybe if we get more people involved, the parties will be reflective. We've talked about, of course, very important, fighting against these voter ID laws, which a lot of us, in my opinion, rightly feel that they're targeting.
Well, they're voter suppression. That's all it is.
Right. So what can we do again? If we get more people involved in the system, maybe these parties will become more reflective. Elimination of gerrymandering is a thing. But what's interesting about gerrymandering is, again, what's important to understand is these parties are private clubs. They're private businesses.
Oh, absolutely.
They're not government.
Oh.
And what does a business in the United States or in any capitalist society, what does it want to do? It wants to control the market. It wants to preserve itself. Now,
It's stake.
exactly. Now, if that means that its customers are happy too, well, that's good. But it wants to survive.
Oh, absolutely. We talk a lot about gerrymandering and redistricting.
Right.
It's very, very important.
So gerrymandering works both ways, unfortunately.
Yes.
And gerrymandering, we're okay with it when it's our party, but we also have to understand that for those who are affected by it, there is a truth for them in their understanding too that should be heard, and we shouldn't be using gerrymandering to suppress any voice, whether it's our voice or that other voice trying to express us. So that's one way folks are trying to change it. And also looking at public financing. That's the big one. Money.
That's going to be one to open up a new door,
Ooh, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Isn't it?
We know that gerrymandering, though, is a subjective process. And when we have subjective processes that can either go one way or another way, we need to look at making it more a cleaner process. But, I stopped you because we have to take another break. We just had so much fun.
There you go.
We've gone through a whole nother segment.
Oh, it's getting good. Oh, it's getting
we're going to
good.
invite you to call in and join in on the fun at 1-800-450-7876. That's 1-800-450-7876. Don't touch that dial. We really will be right back.
Washington, D.C.'s News Talk, 1450 AM WOS and 95.9 FM.
Good morning. I'm Nick Bovey. Here's the latest from News1.com, brought to you by Unbound. We all got to where we are through hard work and a little help. Open a world of opportunity for a child or elder dreaming of a better tomorrow at unbound.org. A D.C. area shelter for women is being moved due to rising property values. Kenyatta Brunson is director of programs at N Street Village.
We know that we will not be losing women. We will actually be helping and assisting more women.
N Street Village will likely shift services out of the facility in Logan Circle to another neighborhood. Logan Circle had an abundance of homeless shelters, but some facilities had to sell pricey real estate due to buyers and renters coming to the neighborhood and property values going up. A Clinton gas station is cleaning up the mess after a failed ATM theft. Police say a group of criminals tried to ram an ATM early this morning in the 8200 block of Woodyard Road. An employee says he fled to a back room and called 911 as the attack occurred. The thieves were unsuccessful in dislodging the cash machine, but the storefront was demolished. D.C. police are investigating the circumstances around a body found in a wooded area. Authorities say human remains were located around 6:40 last night at the edge of the Rock Creek Parkway on 23rd and P Streets Northwest. No signs of foul play were discovered. A thief is sucking up thousands of dollars in coins from D.C. area car washes. Officials say a suspect has been caught on camera breaking into vacuum machines in D.C., Virginia, and Maryland. A car wash owner says the man has stolen over $200,000 in quarters from dozens of machines. He's filed charges against the suspect, but police have been unable to identify the man, and the charges have been repeatedly dropped. This report has been brought to you in part by the Positive Coaching Alliance. Questions about youth or high school sports? Positive Coaching Alliance can help. PCA, a national nonprofit organization, develops better athletes and better people through youth and high school sports. More info at positivecoach.org. I'm Nick Bovey. When you're looking for news for Black America, go to news1.com.
We're back. We're back with Charles McCullough, founder and principal of CoMcCo. We're talking about why being an independent matters and why we need to move away from a two-party voting system. Now, we've laid the groundwork, and, we're getting carried away. We're not even getting to the point. But we're going to fast forward a little bit and actually talk about our current two-party system.
Yes.
I was looking at Howard Dean's article as I prepare to speak with people. We actually have someone who called in, I believe, Miss Rayford. Welcome to the Thornton Business Hour. And please say your name in case I didn't hear it well from the engineer. Welcome to the Thornton Business Hour.
Well, thank you. My name is Laverne Rayford. How are you all this morning?
All right, Miss Rayford. I did say it well. We're just fine. And how are you?
I'm doing good. I've been listening to the discussion, and it's kind of sparked my interest, and so I thought I'd call in with a question.
Please, go right ahead.
Well, just a quick background on the question. I have a daughter who's in politics. She ran for school board as a Democrat, and she struggled with that whole notion of will people vote for her because she's in a certain party, because she didn't want to lose herself just because she's a registered Democrat.
Yes.
So in listening to that discussion for Mr. McCullough, if you were running for some type of office, would you be comfortable in running as an independent, knowing that people in the other two parties may not be willing to vote for you?
Well, I'm going to allow Mr. McCullough to answer that and to answer it fully. Okay.
Well, actually, I can actually answer that more than theoretically.
Yes.
Actually, Miss Rayford, is it? Yeah, Miss Rayford. Actually, I did and am currently running for office in Arlington County, Virginia, as an independent. And I am running as independent because I want to get past that partyology. Running as independent for Arlington County Board. And that's very important because I'm in a situation where, probably much like you described, your daughter seems to be in maybe a one-party situation in her area where if she joins a particular party, maybe there'll be a pressure upon her to subscribe to a certain ideology, or maybe she won't be able to speak as freely. Maybe she wouldn't be able to propose as many ideas as she would like because they may not have hit that political tipping point yet. And that's the situation that I believe I was in. So I said, you know what? Let's have a voice in Arlington County, Virginia, that is open, that can look past party ideology, can look for good ideas and apply them, whether they've reached their tipping point or not. But most importantly, just listen to the people. Make that my first priority. So to answer your question, yes, definitely, I practice what I preach. I'm an independent voter who is running as an independent.
Thank you very much, Ms. Langford.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that answer.
Mm-hmm. Appreciate your calling in and allowing us to have that perspective.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye. Well, Mr. McCullough, you're a gentleman who practices what he preaches.
There you go.
We're actually led to our next point of conversation, which was actually a more focused review of this two-party system and why, how can we dismantle it? What can we do? If in Virginia, let's say, a person's running as an independent, how does that work? Let's go through the mechanics of it.
Right. So I'll talk about my experience, since that's when I can, I'm definitely most familiar with. Well, number one, you have to get on the ballot. You have to get on the ballot. So it's necessary to collect a certain amount of signatures. So for my race, it was about 150, I believe, and you have to get north of that, of course. Now, if I was running for, and then you have to get it for everyone who's in, to get that amount from the people who are within your constituency.
Yes.
So I had all of Arlington County, about 200,000, some 220,000 folks, a lot of people, to get that number from. Now, if I was a state delegate, a similar amount, but just within my delegate area. Now, but imagine this, and this goes to the hurdle that we start to have with independent candidates as you go further up the ballot. If I was a state candidate in Virginia, I would have to get a couple of thousand different signatures, but they would have to be apportioned throughout all the different districts in Virginia. That's a large feat for someone to do. There's one candidate who was able to make that hurdle for governor this year. It's the Libertarian candidate running, and folks can look into that to see the hurdles that candidate had to go through. But now raise it to the federal level. It becomes that much more Herculean. In 2012, in fact, there was a group. The group was called Americans Elect. They spent $15 million to get onto ballot access in just 26 states. That was just 26 states, and even then, they had about 450,000 people in these 26 states sign on. That's not a lot. They were going to do a kind of a grassroots level, nominate online, narrow to one candidate online. But even then, there just wasn't a lot of energy. It's hard.
Oh, definitely a Herculean effort, as you said. But I want to go down that path a little bit more.
Right.
Once you're on the ballot,
yes,
when folks go to vote,
yes,
there's not a party system in Virginia. Primary, so you just go to vote. Is that correct?
Well,
how does it go?
So in Virginia, we are unique. That's the greatest thing about Virginia, aren't we? I love Virginia. And one interesting thing about us, and it probably goes back to the fact that one of our founding fathers, who was also a founding father of Virginia, Jefferson, he wasn't necessarily a big fan of political parties either. So in Virginia, we all register to vote, but we officially don't check a box to become part of a political party, but we do associate
That's what I'm talking about. So you don't have primaries like a Democratic primary and a Republican. You do?
Well, we still do have primaries like that.
Okay.
Now, sometimes some parties will decide at the county level to hold what we call caucuses, as opposed to primaries. Sometimes at the state level, they decide to hold caucuses, and caucuses are a smaller group meeting. So it's always open to all the Democrats who are people who identify as Democrats.
So if I'm a Democrat and I'm going to the Democratic primary, is your name going to be on the ballot?
My name would not be on that caucus ballot or on that Democrat ballot unless I decide to call myself a Democrat and pay the fee to be presented in front of the Democrats.
So how does one get to vote
for an independent? We show up in the general election.
Okay.
Yes. So if you're an independent, and that pretty much is the case throughout the country, is that if you're an independent, you usually aren't availed to any voting until the general election, because your correlative to the primary is all those signatures you would have gathered.
So
in order to
when
be
we
on the
go
ballot.
to the general election, we have an opportunity to vote for you or to vote for... Well, that's what I'm...
Yes, you do. Yes, you do.
I framed it wrong. I meant when we go to the polls,
oh my goodness,
people will be able to vote for you during this general election.
People will see Charles McCullough's name on the ballot in this general election. Yes.
So the race becomes, and the importance, and folks will be knocking on my door for equal time. So I'll be very, very general about this. The importance is when people see the Republican and the Democrat and the independent on the ballot, oftentimes we discount the independent. I'm reading an article by Howard Dean where he talks about, for Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, the poll suggested that 1 in every 10 voters actually made a different choice to vote for either Libertarian candidate Gary Johnson or Green Party candidate Jill Stein or another candidate. And so the thought is that because we had these independents, that's why, Hillary lost the election. But Hillary actually won the majority of the election in many areas, Hillary Clinton, that is. And so I'm thinking that we want to actually address the notion that an independent candidate is not a viable candidate, because I believe that you've proven just the opposite. So we want to address that. We want, it's on people's minds. Let's address it so that when they see it, they can have a different choice.
Right. Independents are definitely viable candidates. It's about the mentality. You have to go in there, and it's about being that independent voter. And I think when anyone goes into that election booth, what they should be thinking is, the party that I'm in, are you honestly happy with the leadership? You should be thinking to yourself, what can we do to get a more functional government? You should be thinking to yourself, are the principles I hold more important to me than necessarily a party? All that goes to saying an open mind, an educated voter.
An educated voter. I'm going to actually allow our caller to get on the line with you for a moment right now and talk with you. So we actually have one of our favorite callers on the line. Our caller is Denise. Denise, welcome to the Thornton Business Hour. Can you please state your question?
Yes, I am. Good morning, and thank you for taking my call. I am tickled pink that you have such a wonderful guest on to talk about my favorite subject, which is voting and parties and what's going on in the political system here in this country. While I am not an independent at this time, I am truly thinking about it, because I agree with your guest that we should not put ourselves in a box, but use our mind and become more educated about what we want for the good of ourselves and our community, and move in that direction when we cast our vote, regardless of who the candidate may be. So I applaud you having such a wonderful person on to give such insight into how we should move this country forward, so that we are not locked into just one or two frames of thinking. Thank you so much for taking my call, and I will continue to listen. Have a good day.
Thank you, Denise. Yeah, Denise hit it right on the head. We are people of multitudes. You know, we can't just be put inside of a box. And, you know, one thing that you pointed out, Pat, is that that there was consternation over 1/10 of the vote, you know, being independent. But there was consternation, wasn't it? When we started voting independently, that's when the parties started taking notice. That's one way to get that change, isn't it?
And that's when they started changing their platforms.
There you go.
And
there you go.
That's what's most important. And so I really, you know, we're not one side the other. This isn't a campaign.
It's not.
I always encourage my listeners to go with their first mind, to think for themselves, and to look at the facts.
There you go.
Because if you look at the facts, and please start doing research. When I was younger, I used to do research and go and get all the records of how someone voted. It was so difficult then. Now you just have to go online. Go online and find out about people. Go to their website. You know, find out more about what they do. You know, you probably have a website. Do you have a website?
I do. VoteMcCullough.com. It's all one word. VoteMcCullough.
Now, when we're talking about two-party system again,
yes,
and the process for getting on the ballot, you say that as the office goes up, the difficulty of gaining the signatures and everything actually becomes more expansive. It becomes more difficult to get on a ballot.
Yes.
What do we need to do in terms of the actual voting process to make it a more streamlined process? You know, you shouldn't have to wait till the general election. You know, the conversation should be broader.
Right. There are
You have a minute. Go ahead.
There are a number of states that are providing some guidance as to different ways we can get independents involved early, different ways we can avail more people to the two-party system. Like I was saying, open primaries are one. Primaries, a two-party primary system is one. And in that one, this is a unique thing in California where the top two vote getters are the ones who end up in the general election.
Do you hear that better music coming up below us?
Oh.
They're telling us that we have to take another brief pause. I'm going to give you an opportunity to do what Denise did and call in at 1-800-450-7876. We're only going to be back one more time, so don't touch that dial. We will be right back.
Washington, D.C.'s News Talk, 1450 AM WOL and 95.9 FM.
Good morning. This WOL traffic and weather update brought to you by unbound.org. Southbound 295 is a little slow. East Capitol Street to Pennsylvania Avenue. Nothing reported in the way. Inner loop at the Beltway is slow. University Boulevard to New Hampshire Avenue with the road work in the right lane as you head eastbound on the Beltway from Silver Spring toward College Park. Route 50 outbound near 410. The debris cleared as you head up from the Beltway from Chevrolet. It was all cleared away now. Everything is open near 410, and that delay is easing up pretty nicely. You can be the difference between a child continuing their dream of education or leaving it behind. Help make the future brighter for one child at unbound.org. Now your WOL weather forecast for today: sunshine, a high around 70 degrees. For tonight, clear to partly cloudy down to 47. Tomorrow, sunny and a high near 72. Steve Hirschhorn for 1450 AM, 95.9 FM, WOL, where information is power.
You mean you got to be a little fly on our wall while we were talking? Yeah, well, welcome to the Thornton Business Hour after show, if you will, on the before time. You have that one opportunity to call in and speak with Charles at 1-800-450-7876. That's 1-800-450-7876. We've been talking about why being an independent matters and why we need to move away from this two-party system that we have been plagued with for so very, very long. And one of the things I asked Charles and want to ask you, ask him on the air, is the young lady who called in said that her daughter wanted to run for office, but she felt that she had to run as a Democrat. And she was concerned about how that might be viewed and how that may actually influence her ability to talk about issues or to be herself, if you will, not to put words in her mouth. And you had a wonderful response because you were talking about the differences that one might experience if they're locked into a party that doesn't really feel right.
Yes.
So
yes.
Tell us about some of the differences and some of the issues that you might be faced with that if you were a Democrat or a Republican, you might have to present differently, and the sides that you can bring up as an independent that a Democrat or a Republican might not be able to do.
That's a very good question. Well, imagine if you will, it's probably a place like most people live, Arlington County, where I am. It's a great suburb. It's that great mix between urban and suburban. But we're dealing with real issues, like housing affordability, for example. So in issues like housing affordability, I think it's very necessary to look at programs that are working in other parts of the country. We have beautiful things like community land trust, where an entity can own the underlying land, making the house above affordable. Cooperatives, like you've talked about, is something that government can incent. Making sure developers pay their fair share if there's any fees that they can pay to contribute more to affordable housing programs. These are all things I'm able to present as an independent, unencumbered. However, if I was in a particular party, it could be that, well, developers fund a lot. So maybe I shouldn't say a certain thing about developers. Maybe I should just keep those fees the way they are. Or things like a community land trust. That's an example of a new way of holding land. In Virginia, a state that prides itself on having a lot of land rights to the owner, something like that may mean going down to Richmond, having those political discussions with Republicans and Democrats to try to get something like that changed. As an independent, I can go beyond that. Whereas if I was in a particular party, maybe one side wouldn't listen to me and would stop that idea in its tracks.
You're so good at capsulating things. Why don't you capsulate land trust? Because I'm actually dealing with land trust over there in the arts district where I'm at. I understand, and one of our board members, Nathan Mishler, actually was in Baltimore and had a successful land trust project for his master's degree, and he's actually implementing it there. And he tells us about how we can keep the cost of something down by entrusting the land 99 years or something so that it can't go up. Tell us a little bit, just to encapsulate that for us, because I don't want to mess it up. I'm not the attorney or the one who knows.
No problem. Very easy to do. What's great is it works with any size property, single family house, all the way up to a large condominium or apartment development. So we know that the housing price consists of you paying for the land and you paying for the actual building that you live in, and then the appreciation on that building too. A community land trust takes sometimes the largest part of that cost away, the underlying land. So an entity, it could be a government entity or it could be a non-government entity created like by nonprofits, they would purchase that land. They would hold it. They would build a house on top of it. You would buy the house, not worrying about the cost of the underlying land, which is held in the trust. So now you've already taken off part of that cost. You get to have all rights to that house because you own it. You get to improve it like you want to. But then it comes time to sell. This is where it's great. Well, you split some parts of the appreciation cost with me, the person who holds the land trust. You get to take some of the appreciation cost as well as any additional cost and earnings you made from improvements you made on the house. The next person who comes to the house now gets the benefit of not having to pay for the underlying land and not having to pay so much for the appreciation that occurred because we already split that out. Mm-hmm. So it's a way of investing in housing affordability programs that actually keeps the benefit going and going and going. Because imagine if all I did in the beginning is just give you a voucher to pay a landlord. The only people who benefit from that is you for that 1 month.
And the landlord.
And the landlord. Mm-hmm. With the Community Land Trust, you have people benefiting almost in perpetuity. As long as that house is there, everyone keeps getting a lower priced living situation. Isn't that perfect?
Yeah, I thought that was a good example of what you were talking about. Give us one more example. I think we're about to be out of time, so give us another example, one that you think is most important.
Another one is definitely schools, because our children matter so much. And sometimes with schools, it's easy to latch on to certain issues. So, in Arlington, for example, we're only 26 square miles. Oh, goodness, and we're so much built up. So we have to be very careful about how we build, our schools and where we build them. That's a big issue. But that's become such a big issue that it's almost only one of the only ones that we focus on. As an independent, I'm also able to talk about other issues too, like the achievement gap. That's what we also need to focus on too. See, sometimes when you get trapped into party politics, your platform only becomes such a bandwidth. You can't get to necessarily all the issues. But being outside of a party, I'm able to do what every representative should do first. Listen to the people. And the people are saying, hey, guess what, Charles? Yes, how we cite our schools matter, what we're paying to build our schools matter, but also the product of what's coming out of that schools matters to us. I want my children to get a great education no matter what school they're at. Can you talk about that? Yes, I can.
That actually brings us to, one of the most critical points about representation, about two-party systems, and that is not only can you talk about it, but oftentimes I've run for office before, and people would approach me to make deals. I had the reputation for not making deals. That's why I didn't get in. Maybe, there's a different climate this time. So if I ever chose to run again, I may be the favored person. In fact, people are courting me all over the place now because I had such a reputation of not making deals.
2018 is not that far away. There's still time.
They are courting me for 2018, but I'm saying I'm gun shy. I say that to say when you talk about schools, and I want this to be a really critical last point, when you talk about schools and you're talking about achievement gap, you're not able to actually address things that may be controversial when you're in a two-party system.
It becomes hard.
Because the developers want you to address how you're going to let things stay as they are. In terms of not only education, but the divisiveness of two-party system, what do you think would be most important? I'm told by the engineer I only have 2 minutes left, so I'm going to give them to you.
Right. The most important thing to get past this divisiveness is be an independent thinker in there. Vote for people who you see are listening to you and willing to challenge that status quo. That one vote, it does matter. And it adds up, and it adds up. The only way we won't get change is if you keep going along to get along. And you may say, but Charles, amongst those folks out there, I am an independent thinker. I don't see anyone who's good, and I don't see an independent running. And you know what I say to that person? Well, I see you. You can be that person. There's time to get on that ballot in 2018. You can be that independent voice. That voice matters so much. We need it now. So be there. Be there as an independent thinker. Be there as an independent voter. Don't be afraid to break that paradigm. Don't be afraid to go past that letter. There's strength in that. There's community in that. There's growth in that. There's a better tomorrow in that.
I can't say that any better, be that independent thinker. And now if you're not the person running, you can be the person who's thinking.
There you go.
Well, Charles, I certainly thank you. I thank you for being on the show. If someone wants to find out more about you, where should they go?
Oh, they can follow me on Twitter at VoteCMcCullough, VOTECMCCULLOUGH, or of course online at votemccullough.com, VOTEMCCULLOUGH.com.
Well, Charles McCullough, I thank you for bringing the perspective to my listening audience and encouraging people to be independent thinkers and to be people who judge for face value on truth.
There you go.
You know, you had a little slogan. What was it?
Putting people first.
Okay, I thank our engineer Alonzo. I thank Charles for being on. Thank Cheryl McCullough for the reference and referral of her kind son.
And you know, you're a national audience. Just remind your listeners, they can help independents all over. It doesn't matter if you live in Arlington, Virginia, anywhere. You can help all over.
Make sure you do that. Thank the listening audience as I do when I start. This is Pat Thornton signing off for the Thornton Business Hour. Have a very blessed week.